Good morning. I'm Matt Driskill, editor of Asian Aviation Magazine and AsianAviation.com. Welcome to the latest In Conversation, sponsored by Metrojet of Hong Kong. Today we are speaking, again, it's his second time on the show, with Sumesh Patel. He's the president for Asia-Pacific of SITA. Sumesh, welcome to In Conversation. Thanks for joining me again.
Thank you, Matt, and happy to be here.
We first spoke, had our first In Conversation back in May 2020. Things were not looking very good then. Then they got worse. Of course, the world basically shut down. International aviation certainly shut down. Vaccines came out. Things were looking up. But now we're almost 2 full years, 18 months or so into this pandemic. And as I said, international aviation still in really bad shape. We'll get to the airports and technology in a minute. How's the industry looking from where you're sitting?
Matt, I think you know us well, but for those who don't know us, SITA is an integral part of the air transport industry. We are fully owned and dedicated to the airlines and airports around the world. We serve around 1,000 airports globally. Almost every airline in the world uses some or the other services from SITA, and we also serve around 70 governments. So now, what you said, Matt, really, it's a very big question. The pandemic has, is having a dramatic financial and operational impact on the air transport industry, and of course the global economy. As the countries continue, in terms of restricting the movement of the people. In April this year, IATA forecasted that our industry will lose about 47.7 billion in 2021, which is about negative 10.4 net profit margin, which is deeper than what they anticipated at the start of the year. So clearly, our industry is going through a really difficult time. The passenger numbers, if we compare, they are down by about 60.5% compared to 2019, last year in 2020, which is roughly around the same level where it was in 2003. So, our industry, but in 2021, I would say the growth has been a little better. It was minus 38% year on year. And overall, there is a recovery, of course, but a little bit slowly.
Let's talk about that. I mean, some of the recovery we've seen is basically domestic travel in places like the U.S. China, for example, is almost back to pre-pandemic domestic traffic levels. International aviation, of course, is, for all intents and purposes, is shut down pretty much. IATA, you work with airlines. IATA represents the airlines. They've been very strong about talking about using the data as a means to reopen the borders. I talked with Conrad Clifford, who's the new Deputy Director General, and he said, previously we were talking to the transport ministers, now we're talking to the health ministers, and they all want 0 cases, which is never going to happen. Singapore is talking about dealing with the pandemic as it becomes endemic, and that to reopen the economy. And again, back to the data, I mean, is that sort of SITA's position? Is that quarantines and testing is the way, or quarantines is not the way to go, that testing is?
I would say, we need data from two angles, I would say, from 2 perspectives. Firstly, we are quite aligned with IATA's view, and our industry really needs to rely on digitization and data-driven approach to open up the borders. And as you rightly said, the governments are really focused on controlling the virus and its spreads. And this requires several changes in terms of the passenger processes and how the current processes are, right? So at SITA, we played a key role to adapt advanced passenger processing rules, right? So, we already had a system which helped with the blacklist and restricting the terrorists and the unwanted people entering from a particular country. So the overall architecture or the system already existed. What we are now doing is enhancing that system to add health as additional data. So that could help to continue using the similar system, but having added health as another data point to help that. And the second one, which I was, in terms of volatility, right? So even to manage the volatility, we do need data. With the passenger volumes going up and down, the airlines and airports, they need to have the flexibility to scale up and down their operations. And this can, be issue, and it will continue to be there for some time. And this can be achieved, or I would say managed much better, if we have a data-driven approach.
One thing I've been, and it goes back to the digital health passes that you talked about and that you mentioned, digitization. I always have trouble saying that word. The problem, and I've been harping about this in the magazine and in opinion pieces and things like that, is the industry and governments getting together on standards. Because right now, you've got 10 different travel passes out there. You've got IATA, you've got Commons Pass, you've got some others, and they're not on the same standards. When are we going to get standards so that people don't have to have 6 different applications on their phone or carry 20 pages of health certificates?
I would say this goes back to, what we did in 1980s when, the Olympics were launched for the first time. Overall, globally, even as an industry for airlines and airports, we didn't have a common check-in system, right? And that is where the Qt was born. So now, when you look at the airports globally, they have at least a similar passenger processing technologies. So they are all common. From where we see it, clearly it is essential to use the technology and also to automate and create a trust model, especially in terms of the authentication and certification process to ensure the safe travel. The other challenge in terms of having a common system is, you would have seen that in recent past, we have seen a lot of fraud, which is an issue with manual process of paper documentation. Fake COVID vaccine certificates, you have fake RT-PCR tests. And we had, from one of the articles which I read, and I would say it's through Guardian, which said that there are more than 1,200 vendors worldwide providing these services. So it is really key to have a right platform, and that's where we are making investment as SITA. So we have launched a product which is called Health Protect. And Health Protect is basically a platform which allows various different governments to know who is traveling, including the health credentials. So it can be, basically it's an industry-wide certification process for health passes and certifications. So as you rightly said, there are many different partners who are working on this, but what our platform does, it allows these several health schemes to work together. So, and it will take some time to have a standard system in place, because every country wants to have their own app or own system in place. Airlines want to have that, airports want to have that. So what we are doing is to build a platform which is a Health Protect, which will allow these various different health schemes to work together.
Well, they've got to work together. Again, I was talking to Conrad the other day at IATA, and they came out with a study, I think, back in May, talking about passenger processing times, that with paper documents it's taking right now, with travel as bad as it is, it takes 5 hours to process a single passenger. And when traffic does pick up, that's going to go to 8 hours. You're going to have people queuing up, which again is not good. That helps spread the virus. I mean, is SITA talking to governments as well to try to get them to go digital and stop all this nonsense?
Yeah, and you rightly said, the current average time, which IATA said is around, before the pre-COVID was about 1.5 hours was the average time globally for passenger processing, and which is now 5 hours and will go to 8 when we hit back to the same traffic level. So this clearly shows that the digital and the contactless technologies will be the focus of passenger processing. So mainly focusing on mobile, and biometric self-service, right? So most of the thing which you can do on your mobile, and then for the passenger to have a walkthrough experience. So to manage, and even if I take a step back, in 20, or I would say pre-2019, the airports were really struggling in terms of their infrastructure. They said that they are not ready to cater for the expected passenger growth. And everyone thought that with COVID coming in, maybe they can push back some of these expansions and the projects. But with looking at the passenger processing time, which is going to grow multifolds, again, that challenge is not going to go back. So clearly, we'll need to rely on technology to help that. And at SITA, we continue to work with airports and airlines and also the governments to ensure that we reassure our passenger to get the confidence back and putting them in control of their journey.
We're talking about, you brought up a good point about airports, expansion plans, things like that. They sort of shifted now, and everybody's investing in technology, touchless, contactless, biometrics, things like that. I'm just curious, the problem is airports have lost hundreds of billions of dollars. They've had to lay off people, thousands of employees around the world, more than that, with all these moves to go digital and to make that investment and to employ that new technology, can they really afford to do that right now, or is it a matter of they have to, so we're going to spend the money?
So I would say, I will look at it from 2 points of view. One is that, yes, they need to make investment in new technology. And how can we, as their partners, and similarly like SITA, can help them to achieve that and work through these difficult times. So with 2 areas, I would say one is, in technology, as I said, mobile and biometrics. So what we say is that, mobile as your remote control for travel. So many things which you need to do at the airport, you can even do it through your mobile before arriving to the airport. And second, as we say in SITA, your face is your boarding pass, right? So how can you have a walkthrough experience at the airport? One way to achieve the cost efficiency is by driving collaboration, right? So today, if you look at airlines, airports, government, they are at different stage of maturity in terms of implementation of new technology. And it is key that, all the stakeholders come together and try to have a similar and a seamless kind of an approach. And, the technology is evolving. And I would say even before COVID, we as SITA continue to invest in the leading edge technology on behalf of our shareholders or our members for airlines and airports. So many of the airports, I would say, and the airlines, 90% of our customers prefer to have either OPEX or as you go, choose to pay go kind of a model. So it can be either based on the usage or the number of passengers, so that they don't have to shell out those huge investment in terms of technology transformation. And the other key important things is how can you reuse the existing infrastructure of what you have already invested in, right? So how can we ensure that there is interoperability or reusing of the existing investment, what they have made? And that is what we are focusing at SITA to say, the airlines and the airports who have invested for so many years, how can we reuse the technology, but enhance that to be mobile and biometrics ready?
Okay, great. We'll talk about technology some more in just a minute, but Sumesh, right now we need to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Metrojet of Hong Kong. We'll be right back after this.
We're going to have the crown jewels of Asia, and I promise you we're going to have the nicest and busiest business aviation hangar in the region.
And we're back. We're talking to Sumesh Patel, President for Asia-Pacific at SITA. Sumesh, we've been talking about airlines, airports, everybody going digital. a lot of nervous Nellies, I call them, say that this, having everything on your mobile phone and biometrics, people go crazy about privacy concerns. I mean, they're very happy to put their entire life on Facebook, and Google probably knows more about me than my wife does. But with biometrics and everything moving online, are there valid concerns out there about privacy when we have things like biometrics to move through the airport?
Certainly there is, but I would say the need of the hour, and even the IATA research during the pandemic, when they did the research, it shows that the 44% of travelers said that they would like to share their personal data to help them have a touchless and a walkthrough experience, and it's only growing. So from 44%, if you do that maybe now or towards the end of the year, could grow to almost about 65 to 70%. By using the technology such as SITA SmartPath or similar technology, a passenger can have a walkthrough experience. And when it comes to data, clearly we do adhere to the ethics charter for SITA at Borders. So at SITA we are committed for the data ethics, for global standards in the use of the biometrics. One thing in our solution is the data still stays with the data controller. So be it, the government who has the passenger data in terms of the Advanced Passenger Information System, or the airline DCS who has the data in terms of the passenger PNR or the reservation details. Our system basically just validates both data and compares that, provides a go, no go on your biometric gates. So it can say, comparing both the data. So the data still remains with the data owners. And in any case, if that is required for certain processing on the various touch points at the airport, the data is only retained until the flight takes off. So, it really gives assurance to the passenger that, what the data is used for, how long it is being used, and as long as you know what is being done with your data, you are more comfortable to share it, and how long they will keep it, what kind of data has been collected. So if that transparency comes in, and with that you get a kind of a walkthrough experience and a safe travel without touching anything, you would certainly be keen to share that data. One area I would highlight that, as a next step or in terms of the next phase of where this digital or security data is going. So we are exploring the opportunities of sovereign identity. Basically, what it means is that in future, you might have your digital ID like your passport, and which you may be able to use at various different airports and touch points as your digital ID, which could be either on a blockchain or somewhere safe, so that you're not concerned that where it is used. And then every airport you go, you don't have to go through the similar process. You have one digital ID and it can work with various different systems. And clearly, I would say that, the IATA, ACI, ICAO, the World Tourism Council, everyone's working together. So we are currently working with them to say if we can work and create a self-sovereign identity and a digital ID would certainly help for the travelers moving forward.
No, I think that's great. I'm curious, this may seem like a little silly question, but did you ever see the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise?
Yes.
Where they're walking through the shopping mall and you have these scanners that read your retina, your retinal print, and it recognizes you and all that. Do you think we'll ever get to that point?
I would say that will be too far-fetched. I think the first step would be for us to at least get, at least our ATI, the air transport industry, and once that gets to that point, then it's a digital ID, and you can maybe use it at various different points. But today, I would say what we are trialing, and we are already working on this. There are trials ongoing, and we may see at least one digital ID per passenger moving forward. So that could be your digital passport, or in a way.
Let's talk about different regions in Asia. I mean, obviously, we're both in Asia-Pacific. You're in India right now, is that correct?
That's correct.
Stay safe. Are there countries in the region that are rolling out the technology faster than others? China, of course, is building huge brand new airports, and they're making a big push in technology. I live in Singapore. very, you have to have a mobile phone in Singapore to survive because everything is app based, whether it's paying taxes or whatever. Are there other countries that are doing very well in rolling out the technology? Are there some that need to improve?
I would say one good thing COVID has done is helped our industry to accelerate the adoption of new technology and, of course, the digital transformation, right? And that is mainly looking at two areas. One is to gain the passenger confidence to restart travel, and second, in terms of because of COVID, you have a touchless, and basically you touch your own devices rather than touching various different touch points as you go along. I would share maybe two or three different examples in our geo. One, you mentioned China, right? So China at Beijing International Airport, we have deployed our smart path, and basically every touch point for the international travel passenger, you have your face as your passport, so you have a walkthrough experience, and that includes all the 600 biometric checkpoints, about 250 lanes, your self bag drop, everything you do, going from point A to point B all the way until you board the flight. And the surprising thing was that at BCIA, this technology was able to process almost about 400 passengers for an Airbus 380 flight in less than 20 minutes. So it could board almost about 400 passengers in less than 20 minutes. So clearly, technology does help. And similarly, I would say the other countries is, recently at Sydney Airport, we deployed almost about 600 used touch points, including our SITA Flex and bag message. And this is aligned to the airport's vision to have a smarter passenger experience as part of the COVID recovery plan. And the other one I would say is in Mumbai, where we were able to use the existing investment on the kiosk and had enhanced that to have a mobile-enabled kiosk. So whatever you need to do on the kiosk, you can basically do on your own mobile when you're standing in front of the kiosk, and you don't need to touch the kiosk. And the last I would mention which is going beyond, is our recent partnership with Star Alliance, which is the first NEC SITA customer. In this agreement, the passengers of Star Alliance members and the airlines in Asia-Pacific and also globally will be able to use their biometric identity across the participating airlines and the participating airports. So if you are a Star Alliance member and if you're going from airport A to B to C, even in a transit, you just need that one digital identity, biometric identity, which you can pass through. So what I earlier mentioned in terms of Sovereign identity, it's already starting, and we are implementing that for Star Alliance globally, partnering with NEC.
Let's talk about employment for a little bit. I love technology, by the way. I mean, if you look at my office, I've got I've got 5 different screens. I've got an iPad. I've got 3 or 4 computers. I have 3 or 4 computers sitting in a box over here that I don't use anymore. I have a laptop, iPhone, you name it, I've got it. But when it comes to the aviation industry, I mean, a lot of this technology is going to help airports cut costs, because they're not going to have so many people. We already check in ourselves. We can tag our own bags, do all of those kinds of things. We can have our boarding pass on our phone that we've downloaded from the website when we checked in. I mean, is it going to get to a point where passengers do everything except fly the plane?
Well, I had an opportunity to peep into your office setup when we met in your show last May, and I must say it felt like a spaceship. So you've got a lot of IT gadgets all around. Well, for our industry, the digitization of the air transport is clearly accelerated, as we discussed, right, because of the pandemic. And many of our customers say that digitization has advanced by years, and that is owing to the pandemic. One of the key reasons why there is this shift to technology is, for the future profitability for our aviation industry, which clearly depends on the digital shift. And, when we look at the people, even though when we are moving to the digital shift, we will still need the people, and it is not going to replace the employees, mainly because as we adopt the new technology, it is going to be sometimes. So if you just recall when we implemented kiosk at all over the place, now everyone knows how to use the kiosk. But when we initially did, we needed one employee per kiosk, or at least one employee to 5 kiosks to help someone go through the process. Similarly, with the new biometric and the new technology, which we are going through, it will take 3 to 5 years before it is really matured. And then clearly, we need these resources to help facilitate that passenger processing at this point in time. And maybe, who knows, in the next 3 and 5 years, we might have a new challenge or a new technology, and they could be deployed or working and helping with a new challenge or a new passenger processing requirements.
Sumesh, let's put on your fortune-telling cap for just a second. What's the future hold, at least for the rest of this year? I mean, again, with vaccines coming out, around the first of the year, everybody thought, well, great, we'll be traveling again, borders will open up and all of that. And then you get outbreaks in Australia, you get the Delta variant that comes out that's 10 times as transmissible. And everybody says, well, forget about 2021 and maybe 2022, people can start traveling again. Is that kind of what you're seeing from where you sit and the people that you speak with?
I would say it is really hard for anyone to predict, right? So no one has a crystal ball to say when it will restart. But, we see some really good signs. So, you mentioned about the domestic travel. So in Australia, when it opened up, the domestic travel really went up. You look at US, you look at China, even in India, the domestic travel really picked up, but then we were hit by the second wave. And it was really lulled for a short period of time, but again, it's really picking up. If you look at now Europe, right, so with the vaccination in place, they are planning to open up a bit for summer, and we see these positive signs. And for us as an industry, it's a learning, and looking at the successes, what we see, I'm sure that the other countries will similarly open up, but learning through, what happened in India or what happens in Europe now, using, the vaccination as a yardstick to say if people are vaccinated, are we okay to open up slowly?
Is that the bright spot that we're looking for? I mean, I always like to end these shows on a bright spot if we can. Is there anything in particular you're looking at from SITA as a bright spot for the industry or for the company or for SITA?
Matt, I'm an optimistic person, as you know, and I'm confident that our industry will surely bounce back. We've seen this as we just spoke, right, on the domestic market. We've seen the travel bubbles. As soon as the travel is eased a bit, there are people ready to travel. So that's never a challenge, right? And being at the heart of the community, we are committed to working with our customers to keep their operations running. That's the first thing. And of course, we will continue to work with our shareholders, which is airline, airports, and governments, to continue, investing into new technologies and platform for the next generation passenger processing, and then of course on the digital borders to help accelerate the recovery.
Sumesh Patel, President of Asia-Pacific for SITA. Thanks for joining me in conversation.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.